Welcome to the Ricky Mathews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people from across this great state who are working to make it such a great place to live, work, and play. Listen, I came across a quote from Babe Zaharias. Boy, it's pretty simple. You've heard it before, but this is in his words, and it just reminded me of something. But here it is. If you win through bad sportsmanship, that's no real victory. And I agree, man. I mean, what constitutes true victory? What really constitutes true victory? Whether it's in a sports situation or whether it's in your business or in your life, I think it makes a difference that you achieve success through hard work, dedication, and playing with honor and respect for yourself and for others. I think someone who I believe does that, who lives by example and, frankly, puts it out there for the world to see on his social media platforms. I'm impressed by it, and he's a good friend. He's someone I enjoy having on this show is Robert St. John, the restaurateur and chef and SuperTalk columnist, and we could go on and on. Author, TV personality. You've been called a lot of things, haven't you, Robert?
I have literally been called a lot of things over the years, Ricky. That is true. The best thing I could ever be called, though, is Dad. That's my best job. I got a lot of job titles, but the most important one I've ever had is Dad.
Yeah, it's been fun watching. I don't know your son. I've only followed him through your posts, but I've followed you for a long time, and I've literally watched your son grow up, and I've never actually even met him before. But I love the way, and you and I have chatted about this before, but you're trying to do it right. He spent time in Italy. He's been to culinary school. I'm assuming he's still in New Orleans, right? Working?
No. Yeah. He was doing his externship at Emerald's this spring, and now he's back at the Culinary Institute of America up in Hyde Park, New York. He's about to finish up his next to last semester. He'll finish in December and graduate, and then he moves to Chicago for 2 years to work for. He's on an 8-year plan, and he's about 5.5 years into the 8-year plan. So
that's so impressive. It's so impressive. How does he look back on his time at the Emerald Restaurant?
Oh, it was an amazing experience. I don't know if you've had EJ Lagasse on your show or not, but there are a lot of coast roots there, so you need to.
Yeah.
He is an amazing, extraordinary young man at 21 years old. But at 13 years old, I mean, he was working in New York like most kids were going to summer camp and swimming or sailing out, from the yacht club and in playing golf or whatever. EJ was working in kitchens in New York and 3-star Michelin restaurants and stuff at 13, and just. He's very, very impressive young man, and what he has done at Emerald's. Emerald's was a great restaurant, but they shut it down and totally redid it and took it up, as Emerald would say, several notches. But I'll tell you this, it's I would say this time last year, if you talked about the 2 best fine dining restaurants in New Orleans, you would have probably Commander's Palace, August, that hit all and there may be a few up in that area. But then if you go to California, New York, you've got like Per Se and French Laundry that are up here. Well, the current Emerald's is just, a half step below that. They are excelling on all levels. It's an amazing Michelin has not been in New Orleans ever. New Orleans is not a Michelin-rated city. The word is they're there now.
Yeah.
And we'll start seeing some stars come out of New Orleans, which is America's most interesting food city, certainly in the top 3, I would think. And it's about time Michelin got there. I would imagine Emerald's in its current state, launches with 2 stars, which is impressive.
What's amazing? Coming back to EJ
yeah, I know let me just finish this thought because you start out with my son. So my son Harrison working in that kitchen, I got a little bit of, to see behind the scenes and stuff like that. It's so impressive. I think there's hardly anybody over 30. The majority of people, I would say, are under 30. And it is I don't know how much money they spent millions of dollars on the kitchen, and it's just anybody listening now that is interested in fine dining. I mean, that is an artist studio right now. You need to go check that out and follow this kid. He's going to do huge things. 21 years old. It's pretty amazing.
Well, you took the thought right out of my mind, but I'll add to that too. Okay, so here's your son, a young guy on this, as you pointed out, this 8-year plan. And he's had tremendous exposure through your businesses and through your travels. And I mean, what an opportunity for him. But to go over there and work, I mean, it's one thing to be a young chef in a restaurant and contributing where someone else is running it and all. But for EJ, he's running the show, man, at 21 years old. Tell me about, what is that like? I can't picture it.
I would think for most people, it's a challenge and stressful and, almost an insurmountable task to be performing at that level at that age. But for this guy, he's like 21 going on 60. He is, he's a very unique, that's why you need to have him on your show.
Yeah. I know his dad. I'll send his dad a note and arrange that.
I bet when he was 10, he was just carrying on conversation with adults at that level. And so I think for him, it's obviously what he's wanted to do all his life. And it was what was kind of set out and planned for him. And so he had all these great experiences. And he had great experiences and great exposure. And that's what we talk about in our family a lot, is high exposure. You want high exposure to all sorts of things. And that doesn't mean money. It doesn't mean material things, but it just means experiences and different people in different places and things like that. So, but I think at 20, he was working over in London at Michelin 3-star restaurants and maybe Denmark. I mean, just, he's had very, very high exposure, and it's all absorbed. And that's another thing. I mean, you can get the exposure, but then to take that and do something, which is what he's done. There's his chef de cuisine is Josh, drawing a blank on his name, but that guy's sharp too. And I think they met in a London restaurant. And if you like fine dining at the level of Per Se and French Laundry and, all those kind of places, you've got it in New Orleans right now.
I guess the defining, ultimately the definition for EJ is that he's just a prodigy. I mean, he's just a prodigy.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And, Emeril was the youngest executive chef ever at Commander's Palace. I mean, he was in his 20s and stepped into that institution right after Paul Prudhomme. So his dad had it in him too. And his dad hit big on TV. And I think for a long time, there were a lot of industry people who, maybe they were critical of him. I've always been so impressed with that guy. He's got like a PhD in this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just jealousy by a lot of people because he hit so big. He was really the first superstar on Food Network and did it right. And so, EJ grew up in a household that had that much knowledge and experience. And then, I bet when you talk to Emeril, if you do, he's going to tell you that EJ is going to surpass him. And that's what every dad wants. Every dad wants his son to do. I tell my son that all the time. I said, man, you are going to do so much better than I've done. And you're going to go so much farther and all that stuff. And EJ Lagasse will do the same.
That's really cool. That's really cool to hear. You heard how I started the show out. This whole notion of, winning at all costs at the end of the day is not a genuine victory. That whether you're doing sports or life or business, that this whole notion of hard work and dedication my dad used to say, you don't skip any steps. If you skip steps, you will eventually have to pay the piper. But you talk a lot about ingredients, and we may be coming to the end of the segment. If we are, we'll pick it up on the other side. But you talk a lot about ingredients, and in fact, you recently posted on X about ingredients, one specific ingredient. and what you're willing and able and what you will do to get something there that you think is going to be a good ingredient that will help you kind of move things forward. To run a restaurant like you are trying to do, like you are doing, you can't skip steps, can you?
No. And if you do, you're just in the mediocre, swath of all the mediocre restaurants. You want to find out where your niche is. And we're a mid-scale restaurant now. Purple Parrot, our fine dining restaurant, was, we were open 33 years. That was a COVID casualty. And so that's at a different level. But where we are at Crescent City Grill, we have a few standards, and we have a lot of standards, actually. And quality ingredients is part of the deal.
We'll pick it up. We'll pick it up from there when we get on the other side as we continue our conversation with the restaurateur, Robert St. John. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have my friend, restaurateur Robert St. John, with us, and we were just talking about, in the end, it doesn't pay to skip steps. I mean, you got to put your time in if you want true success. And we were talking about ingredients specifically. You wrote a column recently, actually, about your commitment to Gulf Fresh seafood. That's important to you.
Yeah. So I think what you were referring to is when, like in 1987, was the last job I had as a waiter. I was a waiter through a very long and storied college career. And hopefully the last time I'll ever wait tables was summer of 87 before we opened Purple Parrot. I worked at Harbor Docks in Destin, Florida, and worked for Charles Morgan there, which was a great experience for me because, it's right there on the harbor, but they also have a wholesale seafood business. And so the boats were pulling right up to the docks at the restaurant, unloading all this fresh fish every day. And then they just bring it right into the restaurant, cut it and serve it. And so that's really kind of the culture I really first connected with. I grew up eating seafood. I mean, we had a little fish camp up the Pascagoula River. And so I spent my summers on the coast. We had a little shrimp trawl that would go behind our boat, and, we catch redfish back when there wasn't a limit. And those things. So we put out crab traps every day, checked them in the morning and at night, put chicken necks in, and did the whole drill. So my love of seafood really came from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. My first raw oyster I ever ate when I was 10 was at Bear Seb's. And but my commitment to fresh seafood came from my time at Harbor Docks. And so after that summer, we opened Purple Parrot, the cafe and the grill. The grill's still open in December of 87, but nobody was shipping fresh fish up here to Hattiesburg back then. And so what I would do, I would get my friends at Harbor Docks to pack the snapper, grouper, whatever we were buying, triple tail, which is my favorite Gulf fish, by the way. Pack it in ice chest and ship it up on the Greyhound bus. And so 3 days a week, I would meet the Greyhound bus at the station, and we were doing all this fresh Gulf fish and seafood. And after 2 or 3 years, because nobody in Hattiesburg was serving fresh fish. I mean, there really were only maybe 1 or 2 independent restaurants open then. I mean, there's an army of places now. But I think after a couple of years, we were buying enough seafood that suppliers from New Orleans to Bayou La Battery were coming up, and we were buying stuff from them. So, it's key and it's important. It's in. We have never served a piece of frozen catch of the day ever. We're exclusively Gulf. We were serving sheep's head back when people weren't serving sheep's head. When I was growing up at that fish camp, and I don't know how you treat sheep's head today, but it was trash fish for us back then, and not because it tasted bad, but because the yield is so bad. I mean, you get hardly any meat off of a sheep's head, but the flavor is great. And we were doing that way long ago, and puppy drum and things like that. I can remember when I was buying seafood, we were buying sheep's head early on for like $1.75 a pound or something. It's probably up to $8 or $9 a pound today. But yeah, I don't want to sit here and be the old guy talking about the good old days.
Hey, I love sheephead. I really, really like triple tail. Blackfish is really by far my favorite as well. And I'm lucky, Robert, because my son Jordan had come get the boat, and he loves the triple tail fish. So we get a good supply.
The old timers say if you can see a triple tail, you're going to catch a triple tail.
Right.
Something in the water and just chuck a shrimp over there, and he's going to eat it.
What he runs crab pots and of course the channel markers, and he'll just run along at a certain speed. And he won't even stop if he doesn't see it. Yeah. And by the way, I tell you, let me see if I can find the picture. But he caught one this past weekend. He went, I think Sunday. He just went for a little bit just to enjoy it. And he said when he saw it, it was black. It was literally black. And what he did is he tossed a small live finger mullet over. And he said it just immediately turned gold. It just went, choosh. It's like, oh my gosh, the way he describes it. But he loves doing that. He loves the feeling of it. Let's see if I got a picture. Here is
my brother, huge. We both grew up. Let me see. Oh wow,
there it is in gold. So I'm just showing him a picture that Jordan took while he was fighting the fish. But go ahead.
So our dad died. I was 6. My brother was 10. And my mom, knew she couldn't play football and she wasn't going to hunt, but she figured she could learn how to fish. And she did one of the great mom moves of a widow ever. And she bought this little fish camp up Johns Bayou, up to Bluff Creek, the Pascagoula River. And there were a lot of old Hattiesburg families that had places there. And so we spent summers there, and it was a great experience. It didn't stick with me as much as it did with my brother, Drew, who is a big duck hunter and a big fisherman, and he's got a place in the pass. And I think you had him on recently, maybe. And
yeah, I had him on my outdoor show. And, of course, I remember well the story about your mother. And it occurred to me, actually, while we were talking, that I need to have both of y'all on together.
That'd be fun.
That would be I'll get Cammie to set that up and we'll make that happen. But he told the story of what you guys were willing to do in that skiff. I mean, where you went. And I think you went to Round Island once. He said you didn't know what you couldn't do. That's what he said.
Yeah. Well, we started out with a little bass boat because that's all. My mom was a public school art teacher. I mean, we couldn't afford, much. And we had a trailer off of the water and a bass boat. And first time we put the bass boat in the water, the plug wasn't in. And so I know people have done that before. But, yeah, we'd go out to Round Island and Pine Island. Anybody who tells me they're from that area, I'll ask, well, did you grow up skiing on the Pascagoula River in Bluff Creek? Yeah. And I'll say, did you go to Pine Island? Because I've got such great memories of Pine Island and, camping out there. And it was a blast. Coast
listen, you and I haven't talked. Well, I was going to say, we haven't talked much about this, but when you say that your mother's commitment to teaching you and showing you and letting you experience the outdoors, with your dad not being there, what a gift that was. I know it settled in with you later in your life, but certainly with Drew. I think about Drew. I mean, I tell you, I've enjoyed getting to know your brother because, first of all, he's a really, really good person. He does absolutely love the outdoors. And in his business success and finding business success, he's been willing to sort of put his money and his energy where his commitment is. I mean, funding multiple chairs over the years at Mississippi State, and more recently, the Deer Lab. I mean, the chair for the Howard. I mean, listen, Bronson Strickland, who heads that program at the Deer Lab, is one of the most noted deer experts in the United States, and the St. John Family Trust funds that chair. I'm so impressed with your brother.
Well, and that St. John Family Trust, that's all my brother too. So he's he that's what I was going to say. He really connected and stuck with the whole outdoors thing. Our grandfather, our mom's dad, worked for AT&T. In his last 10 years, he was in New York on Madison Avenue, and he retired in 1970 and came back. I didn't realize it at the time, but I think about it nowadays. He came back to try to help his daughter, our mom, and he was a big outdoorsman. And so we did a lot with him. Loved to hunt, loved to fish, and he was kind of one of these gentleman hunter kind of guys, and a great storyteller, and he was a big influence on us as well.
Yeah, well, Drew now is a member of the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund board, a terrific member of this incredible board. They've had to start from scratch and create this new trust fund that the state is funding. And then, I actually have said of him that he would be a terrific commissioner on the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Commission. I hope one day he gets that opportunity. Yeah,
I know if he were ever asked, he would certainly tell you, and he'd do a great job with it.
Yeah, because he really lives by example. We've had on that particular commission, we just had too much special interest affecting it, and we've got to get back to protecting the wildlife heritage of the state, and more importantly, they got some tough decisions to make, and we need people there that are going to be selfless leaders. And I think he would be the poster child for what we want to see in that position. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Robert St. John. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have my friend restaurateur Robert St. John with us. Always love catching up with him. So as you look back on your travels, your terrific traveling life, how do you reflect on it?
I think the best thing I'll have ever done at the end, I'm 62. I don't know how many, maybe I got 20 more years or whatever. 20 years from now, if I'm looking back and I think, what is the greatest thing you did for your family? Like, extra table, there's all those things, and employing people. But when it comes to my family, I think probably the best thing I ever did for my family was when we, in 2011, the four of us flew to Sweden, bought a Volvo, and spent the next 6 months in 72 cities in 17 countries on 2 continents. And, just the four of us together. We had some friends come over occasionally, and my buddy Wyatt came, and we worked on a book for 10 weeks. But for the most time, it were the four of us. The kids were 10 and 14. My son was 10. My daughter was 14. And it certainly gave my son a huge case of wanderlust. He loves to travel. And his exposure at that time, they got a lot of exposure, which is really important. My wife homeschooled, and so the education kept going, but the education was so much bigger. And then we were going to these places. And early on, we came back the first year or two. It really just translated into we'd be watching Mission Impossible and go, oh, we went there and we went there, But now, it's just I would encourage everybody to travel as much as you can, as often as you can. And it doesn't have to be that expensive. There are ways to travel without just spending a ton of money. But what I learned, and I wasn't sure this was my intent. My intent originally in doing that long trip was I was going to take a month out of every year, and we would go to a different country and spend a month there. And the thought being is over the dinner table, the previous 11 months is I would let them buy into it. We want to go here. We want to go here. Want to learn some of this language. And then we'd spend a month. And then the next year we go to a different country. And it just hit me one day that, what if we just did it all at once? And so that was the intent. And so, that what I reflect on travel wise, first and foremost, is that first trip, which ended up starting all this other stuff this travel business that I do, spending, I guess I'm a third of the year over in Europe these days, leading tours, which I love to do. There's something in me that loves turning people on to things. I was always like that as a little kid. You know, I'd get a new 45 at the record store, and oh, you got to hear this, you got to hear this, you got to eat at this restaurant, you know, you got to eat here, and so that's just kind of part of my makeup, and so being able to host people in Italy or Spain or England, Scotland, wherever we're going, is I get a kick out of it, because you can only see Michelangelo's David for the first time once. But when I'm with other people who are seeing that, or visiting Dario Cecchini, the butcher in Panzano, or when they're doing it for the first time, that's how I get to relive my first time. And I love travel. I love hosting people over there. We got a couple of tours coming. Actually, there are a couple of spots open in Tuscany. Anybody listening wants to go to Tuscany, go to robertstjohn.com. We'll have a blast.
Robert, what's interesting to me, you know, and we've chatted about your family's incredible 6-month journey, is when you talk about this thing about introducing it to other people and that you get to see it again through their eyes. I feel the same way, incidentally, about when I take kids in the outdoors. You know, it never gets old to me to see it through their eyes. I mean, I just love to do that. But you did do it for the first time. You did do it all those countries and cities for the first time. And to me, to try to get my head around that, and I have wanderlust in me. I love to travel. Again, we've talked about this before. My favorite is Croatia. I can't wait to bring my entire family back there. But beautiful. the thing is, it's a daunting task to do what y'all did. You know, the fear of going from one country to the next, and some have better situations than others. You just kind of set all that aside and tackled it, didn't you?
Yeah, maybe it's one of those cases. I didn't know what I didn't know. You know, I just knew I wanted to do this, and it took me 2 years to plan it. And I think, and this is honest to God truth, I think up till about 2 weeks out, my wife still didn't think we were really going to do it. And I was determined, and so it was a lot less challenging. It was the early days of GPS, and we had like a Garmin. You know, today when I'm over there, I just use my phone. But it was had it been maybe 5 years earlier, it would have really been tough working off of maps. So those people used to, you know, because I mean we landed in Sweden, and about 5 weeks later we're in Istanbul, Turkey. And that's a long way and a bunch of water off. And so we were moving pretty swiftly there in those early days. But you know, I never really. I'm worried there was one point. We don't have time today, but next time I'm on, remind me to talk to you about heading to Croatia from Albania. And it's really the one time I really thought, we're in danger here. We're in trouble. What have I done? I've put my kids in harm's way here, and it ended up turning out to be nothing but. There was a scary moment in Albania.
Yeah, you don't want that. You know, when we went from Split to Dubrovnik, you go through Bosnia, of course.
Yeah, right.
In my mind's eye, I remember the conflict, and what I remembered about Bosnia wasn't very good, actually. Yeah. So we had a driver, and you know he did a great job. His name was Henry, and we hooked up with Henry everywhere we wanted to go that was any length of a drive. And he said, I said, I'm kind of concerned about going through Bosnia. He goes, concerned about going, you know, he has his broken English, but you concerned about going to Bosnia? Wait till you see Bosnia. I'm gonna take you to get some coffee in Bosnia. I said, okay, good. So we go there. When we go through customs, when they see that we're Americans, they were so pleased to see us. See, in reality, they love Americans because Americans were part of helping free the conflict that was taking place there. Yeah. And we went to a local coffee shop in Bosnia, and people there treated us like we were kings and queens. It was awesome. But isn't that interesting how in your mind's eye you have one thing, and then when you experience it's something totally different?
Yeah, I can remember somebody tell me when I was planning the trip, and I would just talk to people who travel a lot, and I was trying to get tips and and I remember talking to a friend of mine who's a professor here at USM. He had just taken his son to Croatia. And I thought, oh, Lord. And I thought the same thing. There's Bosnia, Herzegovina, and the whole Croatian thing. And I was like, man, that just sounds like third world, war area. It is beautiful. I mean, It is. The Italians cross the Adriatic and they vacation in Croatia.
Yeah.
Like you said, just the whole city. It's a double-walled city, as you know, on the water, and it's marble streets and marble buildings, and it just has this amber glow at night, and it's perfect.
And the people are so friendly. When we were in Dubrovnik, incidentally, we hired a woman, someone who Henry knew. We wanted someone who was actually there during the 90s when the bombs were coming in, flying in from all directions. And they didn't have a military there. It was the policemen that defended Dubrovnik during that time. And we went up to the top of the mountain, and she talked us through it and explained what it was like to be there at the time. And it was a tough time. But then you can appreciate why when Croatia got into the World Cup, this little bitty country. And by the way, we were there. We were in Old Town Dubrovnik in a pub watching it with Croatian people, watching the Croatian team in the World Cup. What an incredible experience that was, man. Oh my gosh. And even though they lost, there were celebrations in the streets, man. They just so much pride.
And so that's where this whole, seafood heritage from New Orleans and the Mississippi Gulf Coast comes from those Croat and Yugoslavian back in the day.
Yeah.
In those families, heritage. And did you go to Montenegro?
No, we didn't. No.
It's more. Next time you're in that area, go to Montenegro.
I can only imagine. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Anne's grandparents came from Hvar and Brock. And of course, we went to visit those islands off of Split while we were there. And gosh, man, it was tough times back in those days when they made the decision to go to Biloxi. Amazingly brave decision. Hey, when we come back, we'll have a final segment with Robert St. John. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. We're visiting with restaurateur Robert St. John. Never know where the conversation is going to go. But Robert, while we're on the subject of traveling, I don't know if I've ever asked you about this before, but I was enamored by the 3 documentary series that Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman put together. I don't know. Have you seen A Long Way Up, Long Way Down, A Long Way Around?
I have not, but I'm about to add it to a list.
You got to do it. You can see it on Apple TV, but they did it on motorcycles. They went around the world. They went down to the tip of South America and all the way up to Los Angeles, and they did the same thing on the European continent. And gosh, dude, it is so good. And you're with them. A documentary crew's with them as they go from city to city. They go through. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. Of course, they go through Russia for sure, and they go through Ukraine. And you get a sense to see the part of Ukraine that now is destroyed, but they went through that obviously before the war. But it's enlightening about how small the world is. At the end of the day, you come to the conclusion that the world is small. That's the bottom line.
We ran into people. There's like 2 degrees of separation in Mississippi, and on that long 6-month trip, I think there were several times, maybe in Venice, in Florence. Possibly in Rome and in Spain, we ran into, people we knew, like halfway across the world.
Yeah, and it's so cool. You just never know. Hey, listen, I don't want to leave. I saw something posted about a bourbon dinner coming up on the 9th of July. What's that? What you doing there?
You know what? Once we closed Purple Parrot, then we started doing feature dinners and pop-ups. And we've got great relationships with different distilleries and everything. So at Crescent City Grill, we've got a bourbon dinner coming up. And if you just go to our social media and you're interested in coming to that, we'd love to have you. If you're on the coast, just drive up. And Chef Neville Barr is our chief culinary officer for all of the restaurants. And he's got. I haven't even seen the menu yet, but it is what I know about Chef Neville. Man, it is whatever he comes up with, he's going to knock it out of the park.
Well, your story of recovery is an incredible story, and so I always find it so ironic when I think about the number of bottles that you have in your collection, and that you're having a bourbon dinner, and you know this relationship with distilleries, and you'll never drink a drink. It's so inspiring to hear that.
Let's hope not. The world's a better place without Robert drinking in it. So we've got about 4,000 bottles of wine in our inventory. I've been clean and sober since May of '83. So I let other people. I'm not a prude about it. And put my kids through college. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got that coming up, and I handle the food in, and then we have other people in the company that take care of all the alcohol stuff. And
then of course let's before we're coming to the very end now, but as it relates to your efforts to feed people who can't afford to feed themselves, I mean, come on now, that's an incredibly important work you're doing there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Extra Table, it's a beautiful thing. Martha Allen, who's the executive director, has been on your show. You know Martha. She runs Extra Table, and she's got a small staff. Probably the smallest staff you're going to see for a statewide agency that's feeding. I think last year it was 6 million meals. We delivered to over 63 agencies across the state of Mississippi at no cost to those agencies. And that's the beautiful thing, because Mississippi, number one in food insecurity. But we have a lot of people out there doing the work that needs to be done to get food to people in need. The problem is they run out of food a lot. And so, when I came up with Extra Table, didn't want to reinvent the wheel. There are people out there doing the work. We just need to be able to get them food, and we need to get them healthy food. And that's what Extra Table does. And Martha and her team are doing a fantastic job there. And it's been really cool to be a small part of something that started with an idea and then just has blown up way beyond what I can remember. At one of our board meetings early on, the board came up with the goal to be in every county in Mississippi. And I was rah, rah, rah like that. Inside, I didn't say it, but on the inside, I was like, there's no way we're going to do that. And if you look at the counties that we affect nowadays, I mean, we're probably 70 out of 82. So it's Extra Table is feeding Mississippi, and that's kind of my life's mission in one way or another, is to feed Mississippians in need and feed Mississippians who want to dine out.
Yeah, we don't talk enough about food insecurity. I've as it related to the healthcare discussion and debate that was taking place in the state. When you think about over 51% of Mississippians live in rural areas. And in a lot of those rural areas, this is not just about people in rural areas, but this comment is specifically that a lot of those rural areas, they don't have, grocery stores and other things nearby. They get their food from places like convenience stores. It's terrible. So you're providing healthy food, and gosh, is it important work. We'll continue to stay focused on it, because I admire what you're doing there. But until the next time, my friend, have a good one.
All right, Ricky, wear your sunscreen. Stay cool. Thanks for everything you do for Mississippi, buddy.
You bet, my friend. This has been Robert St. John. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.